Hello, my name is Peter Phelps of Phelps 3D, and in this FreeCAD 016 tutorial, which comes from the Engineering Design with Solidworks book, we're going to build the flashlight, which is part 3 of the flashlight series. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Now this, I've tried to record this about 4 or 5 times, so, and I just had a problem with the sound, so I'm going to redo it with that sound. What I did is I copied the helix and the sweep part from the last lesson, and we'll be using this here for this, but we're going to have to modify it a little bit later. But basically it's the same size threads. So I'm going to hide this and we'll get on with the other part. So we're in part design. We're going to start a new sketch in the XZ plane. Say OK. Now we're going to make this at the bottom of this and try to pin it to the bottom of the x-axis. We're going to make a sketch here with the polyline tool. And I'm going to make sure that's straight. We're going to pin that to the axis. We're going to set the height of this. Whoops. Okay, I see what I did wrong here. I clicked the wrong one. We're going to have to fix it in a little bit. Now I'm re-narrating this because of an issue with the audio. So I gotta come back up. I wanted to make that flat, but this is the dimensions the wrong direction. And that's what's holding this up. So I gotta go in and delete constraints. Here I'm being a total dork. I didn't see that I hit the wrong dimension. That's why. I'll eventually figure it out. Make it straight. Make that one straight. Set this one to the right one. 2.54. Height. Then we're going to set the outer corner there to the z-axis. No. 65.09. Then the outside point on the bottom one to the axis. We'll set that one to 55.565. Say OK. Then we're going to set, whoops, something happened there, it didn't take the number. Just set the angle to 95 degrees between the bottom line and that one. Then we're going to set a parallel constraint for the 2 lines there. Then we're going to set the height to 2. I'm doing a little calculation on the calculator at this moment because it's 35.56. Say okay. Now that pretty much sets all the dimensions for this, but we need one more dimension. So we're going to create another line because we need the dimension from it to the corner of the inside of the part. Now for some reason, I had done this several times, and this number came out differently than the last few times I did it. But what I did is I created a line there and I made it a construction line, and then I used that to figure out the radius inside. But I'm going to sit here and go back and forth a little bit. I'll say cancel, and I'm going to see if maybe I didn't get that line and I accidentally double escaped out of that. Maybe I didn't get that totally pinned to the center, to the origin there. So I'm going to try this again, but it does come out the same number, 56.2619, which is just slightly different than what I had came up with the last 3 times I did this, which is why I was a little, what's going on, huh? Okay, but I'm going to just use that number, write it down. I'm probably trying to figure out how that came out differently. It puzzled me very much. But we're just going to use that number. Right now I'm making a calculation because I need to set 2 different radiuses for the next parts. So click close now, Pete. Click close. And we'll go create a rotation. Say okay. So now we'll revolve part, and we're just going to hide that, and we're going to create a new sketch on the XY plane. And we're going to create a circle. I'm going to make sure that the circle is pinned to the origin, and then I'm going to set the radius. We're going to use that number we just found. Say okay, close that. We're going to create another sketch on the XY plane. Say okay, another circle. Make sure it's pinned to the center. Set the radius. And this is going to be 58.8019. Say okay. And close that. Excuse me. Now we're going to create another sketch on the XY plane. But this time we're going to start off with a square. Draw it out. And hit escape. Set the length to 78.74. Say okay. Set the distance between the top of the box to the x-axis is 40.64. And say okay. Then we're going to use the fillet, delete the bottom, then I'm going to use the fillet tool on the corners of the top part. And then I'm going to set the length back so that it's the same as it was before, the 78.74, say okay. Set the height, set the distance from there to there. I goofed up and clicked the line instead of moving the dimension. 40.64, say okay. Now we're going to set the radius of the fillet to 12.7 millimeters, say okay. Click them and select both of the fillets and then make them equal. Then I'm going to select the top two dots here, the bottom of the fillets, click the middle, make it symmetric to the plane. Now this is the tricky part. We're going to create a arc. So we want to click, try to get to the center, sketch it about the same as the outside ring. We're going to click on that and set the radius so it's exactly the same as, well, first I'm making sure it's centered, the arc. And then I'm going to cut the radius. And then 58.8019 is the number we had. Okay. And now this is the fun part. You can't create a fillet between an arc and a line. That doesn't work. FreeCAD won't let you do that. So what you have to do instead is create other types of arcs. Right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this is symmetric to the plane, clicking the corners in the middle, and then I'm going to adjust these here. Now what I didn't do, I probably should have, is made sure that those two lines were equal to each other, the two vertical lines, but it's not going to make a huge difference here. And I'll click those and bring them in, arc them. You want to try to create a gentle arc into it, if you can. And then I'm making sure that they're connected to each other, all the arcs and the lines. So I'm just clicking and dragging and selecting and hitting the single point. I'll say, okay, that looks good. Close. I'm going to copy that and paste it. Open the new one, and then we're going to be subtracting a bunch of numbers, because you want the thickness to be 2.54 all the way around. So we're gonna, for the 78.74, we're subtracting 2.54 twice to get the figure we're going to put into the new length on this one. Say okay. Then the 40.64 we're going to subtract the 2.54 from. $38.1, okay. And then we're going to do the same thing with the radius down here. We're going to take the 58.8019 and subtract the 2.54 from it. So the new radius is 56.2618. Whoops. Just 19. So okay. And then we'll close that because it looks like it's pretty good. I think at this moment I'm messing around because I can't figure out why my microphone light just went off. Thus why I'm having to redub my own video. I'm looking at this and trying to figure out, it's still recording, so why did my microphone light go off? I'm using a Logitech microphone. I'm going to probably buy a better mic pretty soon. But I just continued going because I didn't know if it was still recording audio at all or what was going on. So what we're doing is we're going to, well, I messed up. I went ahead and copied these first. I shouldn't have. I'm going to delete them back out because I needed to move them before I copied them. So these need to go up in the Z axis. The position is 40.64. So we're moving both of those up. 40.64. And then we'll take and copy those and paste them. Now I'm going to hide those two new ones because they're not part of this next piece. And what we're going to do is create two different lofts. Now you may be wondering why I didn't just create a sketch with both pieces and then a sketch with the other two pieces. Well, what happens is it won't allow me to loft them. They won't even show up in the loft menu. So what I had to create them both separately, and we'll create two different lofts. So we're going to go the sketch sketch 2, I think. Let's see. To 2, and then to 5, and then create a solid. Say OK. We'll do that again, but we're going to use 3, 2, 4, and then create a solid and say OK. Now I like to open these up and get rid of the sketches. I hide them by pressing the space bar. That way I don't have to see them. Close it up. We're going to subtract. We're going to take loft 1, and then control click loft 2 and hit the cut icon. And we wait. Okay, now we're going to hide this, what we just did. Bring the sketches back up first, unhide those. Part design, and we're going to pad sketch 6. That will be 117.76. Say OK. Then we're going to do another pad of the sketch 7. That is 115.22. Say OK. Now you may be wondering, I'm going to hide the cut there. You may be wondering why I didn't just map the smaller sketch onto the face of the bigger sketch and then try to cut. But what happens is when you do the mapping, it reverses the sketch for some reason. It makes this round side go towards the flat end, and so it's totally backwards. If you were trying to do a pocket, it wouldn't work. So that's why I did two different pads. Now I'm going to subtract the smaller pad from the bigger pad to create our cut. And now we're going to go in and select the back surface of the inside of that cut. And we're going to go to part design, and we're going to create a sketch. Zoom in a bit, down, whoops. I keep forgetting I need to click in before I move the up and down arrows, so I gotta switch back to the right workbench. Oops. Okay, then clicked in there, come down. We're just gonna sketch a box here. And we're trying to get it kind of right next to where the curve ends into the top. We're going to set the length of this to 73.66 millimeters. Say OK. I'm going to sketch and remove this over. Set one of the sides to 2.54. Now, in the Solidworks book, they talk about making these drafts have a 1-degree angle in. In order to do that, you would have to create two of these boxes at the depth size, and then you'd have to come over and change this 2.54 millimeter. You'd have to figure out what the 1% smaller is, and then do a loft like we just did, instead of just bringing these out. But I'm just going to bring these out as a pad. Closed it. Click pad. 4.45 millimeters is how deep they're supposed to be. And then we're going to select the pad, create a linear pattern. We want it to go on the vertical sketch axis, not the horizontal. We want 7 of these, and we're going to set it to 65. Say OK. So there's the first set of ribs. And we'll bring back the other parts. And we're going to go to part workbench. We're going to combine those. Control clicking here. Click the combine. Union fusion. Okay. And then we can take a look at that. What we're going to do is create a sketch now. Go back over to part, design. We're going to create a sketch on the YZ plane. Say OK. And we're going to create a sketch with the polyline tool. This is going to be the handle. So first I'm going to pin this to the Y plane. Make sure it's straight up and down. Drag it back in so it's just inside the top there. And then make sure that's straight. And we're going to fillet the corner. And we want to come in, zoom in so we can see. And then that's going to be set to 12.7. Say OK. And then we're going to adjust the positioning of the line. So you want to make sure it's a little bit down from the bottom, and then just inside that part and say close. Then we're going to move over here, select that surface, and then create a sketch, zoom in, and we're going to sketch a slot. We're going to take the slot, we're going to set the radius to 2.54, say OK. We're going to set the length here to 25.4, say OK. That's 1 inch. Drag this down. Oh, make it symmetrical first, and then drag it down so it's just inside the arc there, the circle part. Say OK, close. Now, as luck has it, I have my line is directly hitting the other parts, so that's fine. Now we're going to create a sweep using this. So we're going to go over to Part, to Workbench. We're going to select the sweep. We're going to put the last sketch 10 in Create Solid. Switch over and select sketch 9. Say OK. And then I'm going to go in and hide both sketches. And we're going to fuse those together because they created two separate parts. So control selecting both of them. Then we'll go back to part design, rotate around, select the face that's on the outside, and create a sketch. Zoom in here, create a circle. Make sure that the radius will set to 6.475 and say OK. Make sure that it's pinned to the axis. Then there's a distance from that point to the other axis. That is 11.43. Say OK. Then we're going to close that. Now the reason we had to combine the handle with the housing itself was that we want a hole to go through the entire thing. So we're going to pocket that, and we're going to say 40 millimeters. And say OK. Now what we're going to do is switch over, and there are two more ribs that need to be added. We're going to switch over to Wireframe, View, switch our view so we're looking at that. We're going to create a sketch soon. And part design, sketch, YZ plane again. It's OK. Zoom out a bit here. I'm going to create a box square. Now, the reason we use the wireframe mode is so that we can see basically almost where the inside surfaces should be. Now there's a setting for this to the axis, 33.02. Say OK. And we'll want to zoom in. It needs to be a certain amount of distance away from the others. And we want the bottom, this line to the left to be, which would match up with the bottom inside. You can see where that line ends is where the line would be. And I'm going to select this top line here and give it a dimension. I'll go 23.1. Say OK. That way, hopefully, I'm inside the bottom on that part. Now here I'm going to select the bottom and delete it. of the line box. I'm going to drag this up so it matches in there. Drag the other one up too, so it's about there. Now this is kind of the tricky part. You want to create a line that matches the inside arc. Since we really can't see it too much, I have to assume that it's parallel with the other lines. So I'm going to create this line, click there, create another line, and try to match that arc there, the angle. So I'm going to pin that to the bottom. Make that a construction line. Then select that line. Control select the other line. And we're going to create a parallel constraint. And then it looks like I didn't connect that line there correctly. So I need to pin those together. Then I'm going to use a 3-point angle, arc, not angle, and give it a arc into there, and I got to make sure that those are connected. So click that, select those, click that, and then click close. I'm going to undo the wireframe, go back to the regular shading, and then switch around so I can see it. And we're going to copy, select it, copy and paste it. And then we're going to change the positions. The first one we're going to change the X position to 12.7. Save, and then switch to the other one. It's going to be negative 15.25. And then we're going to pad those 2.54 each. Say okay. 2.54. Say okay. So now we have 2 more ribs. These are supposed to support the lantern battery. And we'll want to fuse those all together in part. So now we're going back to that sweep that we had before. I'm going to hide that and hide the sweep, bring up the sketch. I'm not sure it will let me do this. It doesn't look like it will. I was thinking I could just drag it, pull it over, but it's not going to let me do that, so I'm going to close this, go back. Well, yeah, go close. I'm going to delete the sweep, bring back the helix and the sketch. And what I could do is, if I go up to edit, select it, edit preferences and placement, then I can apply incremental changes and tell it to rotate on the Z 180 degrees, and of course it moves it, flips it over to the other side. zoom out, and I don't know what happens here. Somehow I deselected it, and I'm trying to make it changes, but then I realized that there's no object selected. It's like, what? Why isn't it doing it? So I end up going to model. Come on. That's why I noticed it's saying no object selected in the bottom. I go over to model, I select the object, then I get to, it starts to move. Yay! Because basically you have to reverse the threads here. This is the outside thread on the inside. Okay, solid frontnet. Select the helix, say okay. Then hide the, I hide the helix, hide the sketch, bring back up the housing, move the sketch down. But it looks like it needs to be a little smaller. Looks like it's floating a bit. So here I go in and I'm trying to change the radius of the helix. But the problem with that is that I changed it to 56 millimeters. The problem with that is that because of the distance the sketch is away from, it won't work right. So I deleted the sweep, bring back the two sketch and the helix, and go in and change the position of the sketch so that it's in more. Recreate the sweep. Here I'm goofing up because I didn't move I clicked the sketch but I didn't move it, and I'm back messing up again. I didn't realize what I was doing there. So hard to watch myself goof up. Yes, you need an object there, Pete. There we go. Now this, then say okay. Undo that. I hid the helix. Bring this back up. Move the sweep down now. Looks better. I think I'll move this up one more. Oh, it told me in there that it needed to be rotated 180 in the exercise. And so now we're going to create the chamfer that was on the opposite side. And we're doing a variable length 3.81 and 2 millimeters. Say okay. So now it's got that. I think I decide to move it now. Back in. Up one more. 27. It's okay. And then we need to combine those fuse it together. Go file, save, flashlight housing. Yes, I'm replacing this because I've done this several times. We can change the color if we want. So that's okay. File, save again. Now I'm closing it and then I'm opening the assembly. Now since I've done this several times, I already have housing in this file that was imported before when I was doing another version of this. So there's our lantern that I made from my mock-ups, and then these are all the parts that this exercise pretty much has us design. We've got the cap, we've got our O-ring seal, there's a lens that I have, then the light bulb, the reflective lens, our lantern, battery, our button, and then the housing. So those are all the parts to this exercise. This is the last part of this exercise. I hope you will like and subscribe.